誰を半分にしたい？
Hey, this is Salty Will, and today we're going to be looking at Garcia. Garcia is very unique, where she gets really, really strong the more the battle plays out. Imagine her buff similar to like the Devil buff, whereas not necessarily everyone you kill you get extra bonuses, but each turn you get stronger, essentially. So throughout the battle you're going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Let's go ahead and look at her trait. So the key thing she has is rotational acceleration. Now, rotational acceleration, you get 4% attack and 4% defense per stack. So that's already great. Now, I don't recommend playing her at 1 star, because at 1 star, you're only going to start off with 1 stack right there. And it's going to take you a while to get your stacks up. You can only get max of 6 stacks, you get the bonus 3 stacks, not really much going on right here. But if you go to the 5 star right here, which is not the level you need to be to, I recommend being 3 or 4 star with her. But if you look right here is when you get 3 stacks, when she's at 5 star, you get 30% crit. But you start off with 2 stacks at the beginning of the battle and 1 your turn. So turn 1, you're already at 3 stacks, 30% extra crit by default. So she's critting like all the time. And when she reaches 6 stacks, which you could reach by turn 3, you get extra 30% extra crit damage right there. So she does extra crit damage, and at 9 stacks, she's ignoring block and defense. So let's go ahead and look at another thing that helps get her rotational up. Execution time. Now, you have to kill the target with execution time. Do that, you get extra stack of rotational acceleration. So when you hear like, oh, it takes 3, 6, or 9 stacks to really build her up, if you get a kill each turn, you cut that time in half. Because you're going to get the extra, you start off each turn, you get a rotational acceleration, kill somebody, you get rotational acceleration. So you can get your stacks up relatively quickly. And by the time you get to like a few turns in the battle, you're like, oh shit, she's at 9 stacks now. She's just killing everybody. Right? Default skills I use right here, as I mentioned, is Painful Cutting, Fatal Reaping. So if someone near you is dying, you got to be in a cross shape. You're going to attack them and then just do a lot of damage. Essentially, it's piercing damage. Execution Time, which is her default skill. If she has 6 stacks of rotational acceleration, her damage is increased by 45%. So this is like, if you got 6 stacks and you have it built up, you can do 30% extra crit, 30% extra crit damage. You crit on this one, you can do 45% extra damage. And as I mentioned beforehand, you probably have the Devil on her. She's going to do insane damage right there. So she does really high single target damage. Right here, Taste of Blood. It's instant. As I mentioned, she gets extra life. But even if you have full life, you can still use this and do extra damage to help finish someone off to get the rotational damage, execution time, to get the rotational acceleration going. And this one is cost 30 right here. But you could use this skill right here, instant, Taste of Blood, instant. And then you can do a basic attack. Will also increase the damage of any attack you just turn. So when you have 5 energy, you do Spinning Blade, followed by Execution Time. Sometimes that's what you need to get over the top to kill somebody. In this third example, if you have 3 energy, use Taste for Blood, followed by Execution Time, and hopefully get the extra damage to do a kill. Okay, this is what I'm going to call the Lone Ranger build. Essentially, she's going in deep by herself, and it's probably a little suicidal, but it gives her some survivability. So if you go in by yourself and you have no allies by you, you're going to get attack and defense up by 8% and crit increased by 10%. And if you go in deep, let's say turn 1, this is going to increase your crit by 30%, so you're going to get 40% crit rate. And if you have her at 5 stars, you'll have an extra 30%, so you'll get 70% crit rate plus whatever crit rate base you have on her. So you're pretty much going to get a crit first turn if you do this build, and you get extra attack and defense going on. And if you crit right here, you reduce damage by 25% for 1 turn, and you get extra defense. So she has the Fortitude team, which I highly recommend, and she has Papal. And I do not recommend Papal with her at the moment because there's no good auras that really support her. Now, the guy that you're going to want to give the aura to her is Magnus. And Magnus has the one as is the plus 10% attack, 20% defense, but also makes it so when she has a full life, she takes 10% less damage. And she also ignores the fact of injured state. So if she's injured, she still does full attack damage and does not take extra damage herself. So he really helps with survivability. So when you're using that with Mind to build her team, let's look at the Fortitude team itself. Probably gonna want Momo because she has the nice, AOE damage, very defensive, all that helps your team out. You're gonna want Kokoa because she's the healer right there, and then you're gonna want Gloria because she does the team buffing and all that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's your team 5 right there. Now, if you want to mix it up a little bit, what I recommend is Garcia, Momo, Magnus, Dantaline, and then if you take Dantaline, then I recommend you take Inanna as your healer. And a really cool part about Inanna is she has Go Again to the hero. You give it to Garcia, and then Garcia could then use her execution time again for extra rotational acceleration. It really helps ramp things up. If you use it on Void Stab, increase your crit by 15%. After every skill you use, you get an extra 5% crit damage. Right? So she's at 30% default. And then you add this, that's 45% crit chance. Right? You get the extra damage. So your turn 6, you already have 30% extra crit damage. Then you add all this on top of it. She's going to do insane damage, right? It's pretty good. The reason why I don't typically take this one with her is I want the extra life. But, so you got 5%. So you do Taste of Blood, 5%. This one's 5%. Then her attack. So you already got 15% turn 1. This lasts for 2 turns. So that's pretty good skill right there. I take the Newborn Blade mainly because it increases your I don't have it maxed out right now, but it increases your HP by 5%. At the 5-star it's by 10%. And then so you get the extra damage right there and extra survivability, which is great. Now this one, the reason why I have this is just because the extra life. I turn Strike Back off right now, but otherwise if you're being super aggressive, have Strike Back, do 25% extra damage too on that. The other one that's really good with her is the Maverick's Cloak. So if you're being really aggressive, diving deep, you have no allies within 3 tiles of the character. Your attack and defense increases by 12%, and crit increases by 20%. As I mentioned, she has 30% crit pretty much by default. Get extra 20% crit. That is 50% crit. And then you use the other thing on top of it. That's 50 plus 15, 65% crit. She's doing tons of crit, and whatever her default crit rate is, I don't know what that is. Then she's just doing a lot of damage too. But again, I use this for survivability. And then the same thing with the Terror Whisper is I have the Devil. Every time someone dies, you get 3% defense and attack to 30%. So usually she ramps up mid to late battle, a few turns in. I mean, she could do a lot of damage turn 1, but she ramps up. So you get the Devil on top of it, and you got a rotation on top of it. She could do like insane damage later on. And finally, here are 2 skills I've not talked about. Hidden Executioner, which is probably good on PvP when you have the hook shot, or the Spinning Blade when you pull the people to you. And it gets them out of range of their allies, and it allows you to isolate and not allow them to use auras. And then Lock On, it's probably good with the boss fight. You take off Spinning Blade and then use that one instead. And then finally, if you like this guide, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll keep making more content.